Hi everyone. I'm going to practice my calculation skills and select my seventh move in a correspondence game that I started online. And I'm black in this game, and I'll show you how it opened. It was a Scotch game. And here I chose bishop to c5, which is called the classical variation. And we went down the main line. And right here my opponent played what I believe is a novelty, f3. Okay, so now it's my turn and I have to select a move. And the first thing I want to do is take a look at the position and analyze the characteristics of the position. And I want to ask myself in particular, what are all the things that changed because of my opponent's move? So throughout the game, I've been keeping track of, the material count and the open files and the development and the progress of the game. So I'm pretty familiar with the characteristics of the position. So I want to look at my opponent's last move and see what's changed. Well, that pawn on f2 used to be defending his bishop on e3. Now it's not. So now I see a loose piece here. Nothing's defending it. So that's one thing that's changed. Another thing that's changed is this diagonal has opened to the king, and this diagonal has opened as well. So I think that move created some dark squared weaknesses around his king. Maybe I can take advantage of that later. So maybe that's a positional concession he's making with that move. I don't think I can immediately take advantage of it with queen to h4 check. He can block with g3. I just have to retreat my queen. So there's no immediate problem on that diagonal. Okay, another thing that this move accomplished or changed in the position was it defended that pawn on e4. Okay, and one more thing it has changed in the position is my queen used to be looking at that f2 square. And that could come into play in some lines. For example, if my opponent had, instead of played f3, if he had taken my knight here, for example, then I could take his bishop and threaten a checkmate here on f2. So I didn't have to worry about his knight. He has to do something about that mate threat on f2, and then I can win his knight. So knight takes c6 would not have been a good move. But moving the pawn to f3 has changed all of that. Now if I make some non-move, then maybe he can do this, because if I take back, I'm no longer threatening the mate. So that pawn push has kept my queen off of the f2 square. So that's something to consider. That's something that's changed in the position. Okay, so I think I know everything that's changed because of this move f3. So now I want to look at a list of candidate moves, and I want to address a threat that I see in the position. My bishop is also loose. He can get a discovered attack on it by moving his knight. So as I said, he could take this knight. That's a possibility. But another thing I'm more worried about is the move knight to b5, because that has two threats. It threatens my bishop on c5, but also threatens a fork on c7. And I should be ready for that. My instinct is to play d5 in the position. It's the usual move that you want to make in the Scotch game to blunt White's space advantage, because he has the more advanced central pawn and you want to attack it. And that's exactly why instead of f3, the main line continues bishop to c4 to defend that d5 square. So black can't do that anymore safely. And white didn't really address that with this move f3, so my instinct is to play this move d5. But I don't think it works here because of the move knight to b5. It does leave his bishop here undefended, but he's also threatening the fork. So what can I do about this threat? Well, there's two threats. He's threatening my bishop and he's threatening c7. What can I do about that? I can only see maybe a couple, maybe two moves. I could consider taking the bishop. That's one thing. Let's see what would happen. If he doesn't want to remain down material, I think the only move he has is knight takes c7 here, which the computer's not letting me do. Okay, there we go. And then I would move my king somewhere, probably want to attack the knight. and keep an eye on the c7 square, which is a possible escape square now. So he got a pawn and a rook for the bishop that I took. So that trade benefited him. But this knight is trapped in the corner. Perhaps I can collect it up and get 2 pieces for the rook and pawn. But it might take a lot of energy and work getting that knight. And my king looks dangerous on this d file, which can open at any time. And I can't castle anymore. This doesn't look great for me. I could try to target this knight by fianchettoing my bishop, but if I do, he can make some kind of developing move. Let's just make some non-confrontational move here. And if I attack it, he at least can take another pawn here for his knight. And he's getting 2 pawns and the rook for his knight and bishop, and my position is a mess, and I don't like this. So I don't think I like d5 for that reason. d5 just allows this threat, and I don't see how to meet it. I can't meet it like that. That's what I was just saying. Another possibility is protecting it and removing my bishop from attack. That's possible, I suppose. But then what if he takes the bishop with check? I probably could take with the queen. So I guess that's a possible way to play. He's getting the bishop pair. So I'll consider that. Okay, so I guess that's a candidate move then, d5. d5. Is there anything other than knight to b5 I have to worry about here? I think this move saves me. Maybe he doesn't have to take the bishop. Maybe he can take this pawn. Yeah, his queen is defending. And he wins a pawn in that line. And I don't think I can do anything further to win that pawn back or anything. So yeah, I guess I don't like that. So I'm going to discard d5 because of knight to b5. I don't really see any good way to proceed from there. So I think this move f3 is interesting because it's a different way to stop me from moving my pawn to d5. And as I said, the usual way is this move. So it's an interesting novelty, f3. But I still have my doubts that it's good because of the dark squared weaknesses it creates. Not to mention Ben Feingold always says never play f3. Okay, so how am I going to address this threat of knight to b5? Not really worried about knight takes c6 here because I can recapture with the queen and defend the bishop. But this is the move I'm worried about. So how about castling just to get out of the possible fork here? Then if he plays here, that's a mistake because he just loses his bishop for nothing or for a pawn because I can then move the rook. And he has really no follow-up. He can attack my bishop. I can retreat it and attack his knight. He can get his knight out. And he's just down a piece for a pawn. So yeah, I think castling stops knight b5. But what could he do in response to castling? Maybe he can play knight takes c6. And then I have a couple moves to consider. I can consider queen takes knight defending the bishop. And that looks pretty good to me because material is equal. My pawn structure is intact. He still has a little more space because of his central pawn. But I have better development. I have 1, 2, 3 pieces out as well as castling. He has only 1 piece out, no castling. So I like that position, and I might even try this instead and keep the bishop pair and make him move his knight, either trade it off for this knight or move it back. So either way, I like that position. So after castling, I'm not worried about knight takes c6. I'm not worried about knight to b5. That's a blunder. What about knight to f5, protecting his bishop? What do I do here? If I take the bishop and he recaptures, am I okay with this? Yeah, again, I'm better developed. he still has that space advantage here, and I don't have my dark squared bishop anymore to take advantage of the dark squared weaknesses. But I'm at least okay. I don't like the fact that it's going to be hard to push the pawn to d5 because he has 3 pieces defending it. But I can push it to d6 and get my light square bishop maybe out to e6. And then maybe put a rook on d8 and maybe later push it to d5. So I think this position is okay here. Is there something better than bishop takes bishop after knight to f5? I can take the knight, and if he takes the bishop, I have to now move my knight, and it's a little uncomfortable where to move it. I don't really want it there. That's a terrible square. I can maybe move it here and reroute it to g6. I don't really want it, or I can move it here, reroute it to g6, I suppose. Yeah, that's a possibility. Or what about this check? No, it doesn't work because I was thinking this, 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 and this, but it doesn't work because after the check, he can block with the bishop, but now my queen and my knight are under attack, and I think I've just lost. Yeah. Unless I can get away with this strange move counterattacking, but no, he's just going to go up a piece anyway. So no, there's no way to call check there. So I'd probably move the knight either here or here and reroute it to g6. Okay, so that's not terrible to take the knight. I think I like it better to take the bishop and just have better development here. Is there any other move after knight f5? I can just move the bishop somewhere else, like here. He can trade his knight off. He can trade the bishop. Maybe I can get the open A file, capture toward the center. But I have some doable options after knight f5, so I'm not really worried about knight f5. So castling does seem like a good candidate move here. So we covered knight b5, knight takes c6, knight f5. Seems to be no other sensible knight move. He can retreat. If he retreats his knight after castling, I can at least get to this same position again we discussed after knight f5 and recapturing. So I'm not really worried about a knight move. Is there anything else he can do after castling? He can attack my queen. I can take. He can develop the bishop here, here, here. He can get the knight out. He can attack my bishop. I can fall back. It seems fine. I think castling is good. So now the question is there something better than castling to address this threat of knight to b5? I can play something really passive looking here. Then if knight b5, I still have to worry about him taking, so I take here, he takes here. Got the open A file. I can gain a tempo on his bishop, get my bishop out. I suppose that's possible, but after a6, is there another move he can make? I mean, there's still this, but is that move more useful than castling? I don't think so. So I don't see a reason to play a6. I don't want to retreat my bishop back here and block my d-pawn to defend that. I really want to get this bishop out, but as I discussed, a d6 or d5, these moves just don't work because of this. So I think I'm settling on castling here. The only other thing to consider is maybe capturing the knight, like this, 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 but his pawn center is just too strong. I see no reason to do that. That's a big concession. He has more space and a big pawn center. Or capturing with the bishop. There's no real follow-up here either. There's this move. Maybe I can entice his pawn to come forward and my queen and bishop might be competing for this diagonal though. Where am I going to put the queen? Yeah, maybe something like that. Just don't like him getting more space and having the bishop pair. I can try to knock down his center with f6. Doesn't look as good to me as castling. I don't know if I want to voluntarily give up the bishop pair so easily like that and bring a pawn to the center and help him develop his knight, by the way, as well. His knight can get out now. So what other candidate moves? I don't want to take the knight. I don't want to move the d-pawn to get the bishop out. I don't want to move this here to defend. I don't want to move this here to defend. Castling seems best to deal with the threat on c7. And it keeps his knight in a semi-pin because of his loose bishop. Yeah, I see no other moves, so I am going to settle on castling. Okay, so that is about what I'm going to be practicing as I analyze in these correspondence games I've started to play. Hopefully I'm going to practice doing all that kind of stuff I just talked through in my head without moving the pieces around and without drawing all the arrows. That's the kind of thing I want to practice for over-the-board classical chess. All right, thanks for watching.